2.5 pages, 370 words, written on a notepad from inside the house. This wasn't just a ransom note. This was a confession hidden in plain sight. For 28 years, investigators have analyzed every word, every letter, every phrase in the ransom note found in the Ramsey home on December 26, 1996. And what they discovered contradicts everything the family claimed about that night. The note demanded exactly $118,000. Not a round number, not $1 million, but the precise amount of John Ramsey's recent bonus, a number only someone close to the family would know. The note was written using a pad from inside the house, a pen from inside the house, and practice drafts were found in that same notepad, showing someone had started, stopped, and rewritten it. What kidnapper breaks into a home and spends 20 minutes writing a ransom note using the victim's own supplies? On Christmas night 1996, 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey was murdered in her Boulder, Colorado mansion. But the evidence suggests this wasn't a kidnapping gone wrong. This was something far more disturbing, something that happened inside that house, something that the ransom note was designed to hide. Tonight we examine the evidence that points to what really happened, the clues that were there from the beginning, the mistakes that let a killer walk free for 28 years, and the truth that's been buried under decades of media sensation and family secrets. Before we unlock the secrets hidden in that ransom note and examine the evidence that's been overlooked for nearly 3 decades, make sure to subscribe to the Investigation Room and hit that notification bell. Here at the Investigation Room, we bring you comprehensive investigations into cases that refuse to be forgotten. We examine evidence, analyze forensics, critique investigative failures, and respect the victims whose stories we tell. New in-depth documentaries every week. If you think you know this case, what you're about to hear will challenge everything you believed. Hit that like button and let me know in the comments. What's your theory on who wrote that ransom note? Now let's examine the evidence that's been staring investigators in the face for 28 years. Boulder, Colorado, Christmas, 1996. To the outside world, the Ramsey family had everything. John Ramsey, a self-made millionaire who had built Access Graphics into a $1 billion company. Patricia "Patsy" Ramsey, former Miss West Virginia 1977, a woman who had competed on national stages and brought that same drive to her family life. Their children, Burke, 9 years old, quiet and interested in computers and video games, and JonBenét, 6 years old, a child beauty pageant competitor who had won titles across Colorado. They lived in a sprawling Tudor-style mansion on 15th Street, one of Boulder's most prestigious addresses. 15 rooms spread across 7,000 square feet, 3 floors plus a complex basement with multiple rooms, winding hallways, and hidden storage spaces. The house was their castle, and on Christmas 1996, it became their prison. JonBenét Patricia Ramsey was born August 6, 1990, in Atlanta, Georgia. Her name combined her father's first and middle names, JonBenét. From the beginning, she was the baby of the family, doted on, encouraged to perform, to shine, to be seen. By age 4, JonBenét was competing in child beauty pageants. Patsy, drawing from her own pageant experience, had introduced her daughter to the world of competitions. The elaborate dresses, the choreographed routines, the makeup and hairstyling that transformed a preschooler into a miniature adult. JonBenét won titles: Little Miss Colorado, Colorado State All-Star Kids Cover Girl, America's Royale Miss. She performed in talent competitions, singing and dancing. Videos from these pageants show a confident child who loved the spotlight, who smiled at judges, who seemed to genuinely enjoy performing. But critics would later question whether a 6-year-old should be dressed in evening gowns, wearing lipstick and eye makeup, competing for titles judged by adults. Was this harmless fun? Or was it sexualizing a child in ways that might attract dangerous attention? Teachers at High Peaks Elementary School described JonBenét differently than pageant videos suggested. She was energetic but normal. She played with friends. She wasn't always the center of attention. She liked to read. She was learning violin and piano. She was preparing for the children's Christmas program at St. John's Episcopal Church. She was, by most accounts, a typical 6-year-old girl who happened to participate in pageants on weekends. Burke, her older brother, was quieter. He played with model trains in the basement. He was interested in technology. He and JonBenét had typical sibling relationships. Sometimes they played together. Sometimes they fought. Sometimes they ignored each other. John Ramsey was focused on his business. Access Graphics had just crossed $1 billion in revenue. He traveled frequently. He worked long hours. But he was home for Christmas 1996, planning a family vacation to their Michigan property and then a Disney cruise. Patsy ran the household. She organized family activities. She managed JonBenét's pageant schedule. She decorated the house for holidays. She hosted parties. She was active in church and community organizations. To neighbors, they appeared to be a successful, happy family living the American dream in one of Colorado's most beautiful cities. But inside that 15-room mansion, something was about to happen that would shatter that image forever. December 25, 1996, Christmas Day. The Ramsey family woke up to presents under the tree. JonBenét received a bicycle she had wanted. Burke got various toys and games. The family spent the morning at home, opening gifts, playing, enjoying the holiday. John made arrangements for their upcoming trip. They were supposed to fly to Charlevoix, Michigan, the next morning on John's private plane. From there, they would meet family and then head to Florida for a Disney cruise. In the afternoon, the Ramseys attended a Christmas party at the home of Fleet and Priscilla White, close friends who lived nearby in Boulder. The Whites had children similar in age to Burke and JonBenét. The families exchanged gifts. They ate dinner together. The children played. According to every person who attended that party, nothing seemed unusual. The Ramseys appeared relaxed, happy. JonBenét played with the other children. Burke played Nintendo with Fleet White Jr. John and Fleet talked business. Patsy chatted with Priscilla and other guests. The party was normal, joyful, a typical Christmas celebration among friends. The Ramseys left around 9 p.m. It was a short drive, just a few minutes to their home on 15th Street. John and Patsy would later tell police that both children fell asleep in the car during that short drive. John carried JonBenét inside and up to her second-floor bedroom. He laid her on her bed, still wearing the clothes she had worn to the party, a red turtleneck under a white shirt and black velvet pants. Or did he? Later, JonBenét's body would be found wearing completely different clothes, a white Gap shirt and white long johns. When had she changed? Who changed her? This discrepancy would never be adequately explained. Patsy said she checked on JonBenét around 10 p.m. Everything was fine. The house settled into what should have been a peaceful night. Burke went to his room on the second floor. John and Patsy went to their third-floor master bedroom. The house was quiet. By 10 p.m., according to the family's account, everyone was asleep. But evidence suggests that wasn't true, because sometime between 10 p.m. and midnight, JonBenét ate pineapple, fresh pineapple that would be found partially digested in her stomach during the autopsy. Pineapple that the parents claimed she never ate because she went straight to bed asleep. So who gave her the pineapple? When did she eat it? And why did the parents insist she never woke up? A bowl of pineapple would be found on the kitchen table the next morning. Fresh pineapple with a serving spoon. And fingerprints on that bowl belonged to Burke Ramsey and Patsy Ramsey. Not JonBenét's fingerprints, just Burke's and Patsy's. This small detail, this bowl of pineapple, would become one of the most significant pieces of evidence in the case, because it proved the family's timeline was wrong. It proved JonBenét was awakened downstairs after they returned home. And it raised a disturbing question. What else were they wrong about? Or what else were they lying about? Between 10 p.m. on December 25th and 5:52 a.m. on December 26th, something happened in that house. Something that would end a 6-year-old's life. Something that would destroy a family. Something that would launch an investigation so flawed, so contaminated, so mishandled, that 28 years later, no one has been held accountable. December 26, 1996, 5:52 a.m. Patsy Ramsey descended the spiral staircase from the third floor to the second floor, then down to the first floor. She was heading to the kitchen to start coffee. to begin preparations for their early flight to Michigan. On the stairs, near the first floor, she saw something. 3 pieces of paper laid out carefully, impossible to miss. It was a ransom note. Patsy picked up the pages and began reading. The note was addressed to John. It claimed JonBenét had been kidnapped by a small foreign faction. It demanded $118,000 for her safe return. It warned the family not to contact police or FBI. It threatened that JonBenét would be beheaded if they didn't follow instructions. Patsy screamed. She ran upstairs to JonBenét's bedroom. The bed was empty. At 5:52 a.m., Patsy Ramsey called 911. The call would be analyzed thousands of times over the next 28 years. Audio experts would enhance it, study it, debate what could be heard in the background. The 911 operator answered. Patsy's voice was frantic, nearly hysterical. "We have a kidnapping," Patsy said. "Hurry, please." The operator tried to calm her to get information. Patsy explained there was a ransom note. Her daughter was gone. "Are you sure she's not hiding somewhere?" the operator asked. Patsy said she'd checked. JonBenét was gone. John got on the phone briefly. His voice was calmer, more controlled. He confirmed what Patsy had said. A ransom note. Their daughter missing. The operator told them police were on the way. She advised them not to touch anything in the house. Then something critical happened. Something that would become one of the most debated moments in the entire case. Patsy believed she had hung up the phone, but the line didn't immediately disconnect. For several seconds, the 911 call remained active, recording sounds from inside the Ramsey house. Years later, audio enhancement would reveal voices in those final seconds. 3 distinct voices, according to investigators who analyzed the recording. John's voice, "We're not speaking to you." Patsy's voice, "Help me, Jesus. Help me, Jesus." And a third voice, a young male voice, possibly Burke. The words were disputed, but many analysts believed they heard, "What did you find?" If that was Burke's voice, it meant he was awake during the 911 call. It meant he was downstairs with his parents. It meant the family's statement that Burke was asleep in his room and didn't wake up until later was false. Why would the parents lie about that? What were they hiding? The 911 call ended. Patsy hung up, and the Ramsey family began a series of actions that would contaminate the crime scene and compromise the investigation. John called his pilot, Mike Archuleta, to arrange a flight to Atlanta. Not Michigan as originally planned, but Atlanta, where Patsy's family lived. Then John called Fleet White, the friend whose Christmas party they had attended the night before. He told Fleet what happened. Fleet and his wife Priscilla came immediately. Patsy called other friends, the Fernies, the reverend from their church. Within an hour, the Ramsey home would be filled with people, all well-meaning, all trying to help, and all unknowingly destroying potential evidence. This wasn't protocol for a kidnapping. In a kidnapping, you secure the scene. You limit who enters. You wait for instructions from the kidnappers. You don't invite friends and family to contaminate what might become a crime scene. But the Ramseys weren't following protocol. They were panicking, or they were staging, depending on which theory you believe. At 5:59 a.m., 7 minutes after the 911 call, Officer Rick French of the Boulder Police Department arrived at the Ramsey home. What he found was chaos, and what he did next would be criticized for decades as one of the most catastrophic failures in modern law enforcement. Officer Rick French entered the Ramsey home expecting a kidnapping. The 911 call had been clear. Ransom note, missing child, possible abduction. But from the moment he walked through that door, everything about this case went wrong. First mistake, the house was not secured. Officer French allowed the Ramseys and their friends to move freely through the rooms. People were using bathrooms, making coffee, sitting in various areas, touching surfaces, potentially contaminating evidence. In any potential crime scene, the first priority is to preserve evidence, limit access, control movement, document everything before it's disturbed. None of that happened. Detective Linda Arndt arrived around 8:10 a.m. She was alone, waiting for backup that was inexplicably delayed. The Boulder Police Department, a small-town force with limited experience in major crimes, was not prepared for what was unfolding. Fleet and Priscilla White were there. John and Barbara Fernie, more family friends, had arrived. Reverend Roll Hoverstock from St. John's Episcopal Church, came to provide spiritual support. By mid-morning, more than a dozen people had been inside the house. Each person was a potential source of contamination. Each person's DNA, fibers from their clothing, fingerprints, footprints, all of it was now mixed with any evidence the killer might have left. Officer French did conduct a search of the house. He went through rooms on the first floor, the second floor, and down to the basement. In the basement, there was a complex layout: Burke's train room, a boiler room, storage areas, and at the far end, past the boiler room, a small wine cellar with a wooden door. Officer French approached that door. He tried the handle. The door was latched from the outside, a simple latch that could be easily opened, but French didn't open it. He testified later that the door was secured, the latch in place, and he assumed no one could be inside a room that was latched from the outside. He moved on with his search. This decision would haunt him for the rest of his life, because behind that door, just feet from where he stood, JonBenét Ramsey's body was already lying on the floor. If French had opened that door, if he had turned on the light and stepped inside, JonBenét's body would have been discovered within an hour of the 911 call. The crime scene would have been immediately secured. Evidence would have been preserved in place. The investigation would have proceeded completely differently. Instead, her body remained in that room for 7 more hours. The ransom note had specified that the kidnappers would call between 8:12 and 10:00 a.m. with instructions for delivering the money. Everyone in the house waited for that call. 8:00 a.m. came and went. No call. 9:00 a.m. No call. 10:00 a.m. The deadline passed. Still no call. Detective Arndt later testified that as the morning stretched on with no contact from kidnappers, she became increasingly uneasy. This wasn't following any pattern of legitimate kidnappings. Something was very wrong. But she was alone. Backup hadn't arrived. The FBI kidnapping specialists hadn't arrived. She was one detective in a house full of people, trying to manage a situation that was spiraling out of control. At approximately 1 p.m., more than 7 hours after the 911 call, Detective Arndt made a decision that would change everything. She told John Ramsey and Fleet White to search the house again, top to bottom. Look for anything unusual, anything out of place, anything that might provide a clue about where JonBenét was or what had happened. John and Fleet went to the basement. They checked Burke's train room, where model trains were still set up on tracks. They looked through storage areas. They examined a broken basement window that John explained he had broken months earlier when locked out of the house. Then John walked to the far end of the basement, to that wine cellar door. The door Officer French had found latched that morning. John reached for the latch. He opened the door. He stepped inside and turned on the light, and he screamed, "Oh my God! Oh my God!" Fleet White heard the scream and ran to the doorway. There, on the floor of that small room, was JonBenét. She was lying on her back. She wore a white Gap shirt and white long johns. A white cord was tied around her neck, fashioned into a garrote with a broken paintbrush handle twisted into it. The cord had been tightened so severely that it had created a deep furrow in her neck. Duct tape covered her mouth. Her hands were tied loosely above her head with more white cord. Her body was covered with a white blanket that had been nearby. John Ramsey did what any father would do in that moment. He tore the duct tape from her mouth. He untied her hands. He picked up his daughter's body and carried her upstairs. This instinctive reaction destroyed critical evidence. The position of the body, the arrangement of items in the room, trace evidence that might have been on her clothing or skin. All of it was compromised the moment John moved her. Detective Arndt saw John emerge from the basement, JonBenét's body in his arms. She checked for a pulse. There was none. The child's body was cold and stiff. Rigor mortis had set in. JonBenét had been dead for hours. John laid his daughter on the floor in the hallway, near the Christmas tree where presents still sat unwrapped. Friends and family gathered around. Some prayed, some cried, some just stood in shock. What had begun as a kidnapping case 7 hours earlier was now a homicide investigation, and the crime scene had been catastrophically compromised. If you want to understand what happened to JonBenét Ramsey, you have to understand the ransom note, because that note is the key to everything. The note was written on a legal pad found inside the Ramsey home. The pad was located on a counter near the kitchen phone, a notepad Patsy used for making grocery lists and household notes. The pen used to write the note was also from inside the house. A black felt-tip pen that was found placed back in its holder in the kitchen after the note was written. Think about that. Whoever wrote this note used materials from inside the house, then put the pen back where it belonged. The note itself was nearly 3 pages long, 370 words. In the history of kidnapping cases, this is virtually unprecedented. Real ransom notes are short. "We have your daughter. $500,000 cash. Wait for our call." Brief, direct, to the point. This note rambled. It included unnecessary details. It sounded theatrical, almost like dialogue from a movie. Here's what it said. "Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We respect your business but not the country that it serves. At this time we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter." The note went on to demand $118,000 in cash. Not a round number, not $1 million like you would expect for a wealthy family, but $118,000, which happened to be the exact amount of John Ramsey's recent Christmas bonus from Access Graphics. How would a random intruder know that specific number? The note specified denominations, $100,000 in $100 bills, and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. It warned John not to contact police or FBI. It threatened that JonBenét would be beheaded if he did. It instructed John to withdraw the money and wait for a call between 8 and 10 a.m. It told him to be well rested when delivering the ransom. It mentioned his business, Access Graphics, specifically, and it included phrases that sounded like they came from movies. "Don't try to grow a brain" is similar to a line from the movie Speed. The overall tone echoed Dirty Harry and other crime thrillers. The note was signed SBTC. Nobody has ever definitively determined what those initials mean. But here's what makes this note absolutely critical. Inside the notepad, investigators found what appeared to be practice drafts. Someone had started writing, "Mr. and Mrs. R," then stopped, tore out the page, and started over with, "Mr. Ramsey." Someone had time to write a practice note. Someone had time to revise their approach. Someone had time to sit in the Ramsey house and compose nearly 3 pages of theatrical ransom demands. What kidnapper does that? The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit reviewed the note. Their conclusion was damning. This was very likely a staged ransom note written by someone inside the house. Real kidnappers don't break into a home, spend 20 minutes writing a multi-page note using materials from inside the house, kill their victim, leave the body in the basement, and place the note on the stairs. It makes no logical sense. Handwriting analysis became a critical part of the investigation. The Boulder Police Department brought in multiple experts to compare the ransom note to handwriting samples from John Ramsey, Patsy Ramsey, and others with access to the home. John Ramsey was quickly ruled out. His handwriting bore no resemblance to the ransom note. Every expert agreed on this. Patsy Ramsey could not be ruled out. 4 handwriting experts examined her writing samples. 2 said they could not eliminate her as the author of the ransom note. 2 others said the evidence was inconclusive. Nobody said definitively that Patsy wrote the note, but nobody could say definitively that she didn't. The similarities were notable. The way certain letters were formed, the lowercase a written in a specific style, the way letters connected, the spacing, the margins. Some experts pointed to specific words where the handwriting appeared nearly identical to Patsy's natural writing. Others argued that the overall style was different enough that it couldn't be her. Independent handwriting analysts hired by the Ramsey family's defense team concluded that Patsy did not write the note. They pointed to fundamental differences in letter formation and pressure patterns. But the question remained, if Patsy didn't write it, who did? Linguistic analysis of the note provided more clues. Forensic linguists study not just handwriting but word choice, grammar, syntax, phrasing. They can sometimes identify a writer based on their language patterns. The ransom note used educated language. Words like attaché instead of briefcase, phrases like hence and adequate sized. The grammar was largely correct despite attempts to sound less educated. The writers seemed to be trying to disguise their education level, but slipped up repeatedly. This suggested someone familiar with the family, someone who knew John's business and bonus, someone who had time and access to write the note inside the house. But the most damning aspect of the ransom note isn't the handwriting or the linguistics. It's the logic. If this was written by an intruder who broke in intending to kidnap JonBenét for ransom, why did they kill her and leave her body in the basement? The note becomes pointless if there's no kidnapping, unless the plan changed, unless something went wrong, unless JonBenét woke up and screamed and the intruder panicked and killed her. But then why leave the note at all? Why not just flee? The only explanation that makes logical sense is that the note was written after JonBenét was already dead or dying. It was written to mislead investigators, to buy time, to create a false narrative that would point away from what actually happened. And if that's true, then whoever wrote that note knew JonBenét was dead in the basement when they placed it on the stairs for Patsy to find. On December 27, 1996, Dr. John Meyer, the Boulder County coroner, performed the autopsy on JonBenét Ramsey. What he discovered would make an already disturbing case even more horrifying. The official cause of death was asphyxia by strangulation associated with craniocerebral trauma. JonBenét had been strangled, and she had suffered a massive skull fracture. But the sequence of these injuries and the time between them would become one of the most critical aspects of the case. The skull fracture was severe. An 8.5-inch linear crack ran across the right side of her skull. The force required to create such a fracture was substantial, consistent with being struck by a heavy object like a flashlight, baseball bat, or similar blunt instrument. Beneath the skull fracture, there was significant hemorrhaging in the brain. Blood had pooled between the skull and brain tissue. The brain was swelling. This injury alone, even without the strangulation, would likely have been fatal within hours without immediate medical intervention. But here's what makes the timeline so critical. JonBenét didn't die from the head injury immediately. She remained alive, unconscious but breathing, for a significant period after being struck. How long? Medical experts who reviewed the autopsy estimated 45 minutes to 2 hours between the head injury and death. During that time, JonBenét was unconscious. She wasn't moving. Her breathing would have been shallow, irregular. Someone looking at her might have thought she was already dead, but she wasn't. Not yet. At some point during those 45 minutes to 2 hours, someone took white nylon cord, the type sold in hardware stores for general use, and tied it around JonBenét's neck. They didn't just tie it, they fashioned it into a garrote, a device designed for strangulation. They took a broken handle from one of Patsy's paintbrushes, wrapped the cord around it, and created a mechanism that could be twisted to tighten the cord. The garrote was tightened with extreme force. It created a furrow in JonBenét's neck, nearly 3/8 of an inch deep. The cord had embedded into her skin, cutting off oxygen, crushing her airway. Petechial hemorrhaging in her eyes indicated she had struggled to breathe. Her body had fought against the lack of oxygen even though she was unconscious. The strangulation is what ultimately killed her, not the head injury, though that would have been fatal eventually. The strangulation finished what the head blow started. But why was there a gap between the injuries? What happened during those 45 minutes to 2 hours? Some investigators believe this gap represents the time it took for the family to discover what had happened and decide what to do. If Burke hit JonBenét in a moment of anger, the parents might have discovered her injured, panicked, and made the decision to stage the scene rather than call for help. In this scenario, the strangulation was part of the staging. JonBenét was already dying from the head injury. The parents applied the garrote to make it look like an intruder murder, not an accident. Other experts believe the gap simply represents an intruder's behavior. He struck her to subdue her. He thought she was dead or dying. He spent time doing other things, writing the ransom note, staging the scene. Then, realizing she was still breathing, he strangled her to finish the job. Both theories fit the medical evidence. Neither can be definitively proven. The autopsy revealed other injuries. There was trauma to JonBenét's vaginal area. Small abrasions were noted. Blood was found in her underwear. This finding became one of the most controversial aspects of the case. Had JonBenét been sexually assaulted on the night of her death? Dr. Meyer noted the injuries, but couldn't definitively say whether they occurred that night or previously. Some experts who reviewed the autopsy materials believed there was evidence of chronic sexual abuse, older injuries that had healed. Others said the findings were inconclusive, that the injuries could have been from other causes. The question of sexual abuse would later be presented to the grand jury, and what they concluded about it would not be revealed to the public for years. JonBenét's stomach contents provided another crucial piece of evidence. Partially digested pineapple was found in her stomach and upper intestine. Based on digestion rates, Dr. Meyer estimated that JonBenét had eaten pineapple approximately 1 to 2 hours before her death. If the estimated time of death was between midnight and 2 a.m., then JonBenét ate pineapple sometime between 10 p.m. and midnight. But the parents insisted she had fallen asleep in the car and gone straight to bed without eating anything. On the kitchen table, investigators found a bowl of fresh pineapple with a serving spoon. Fingerprints on that bowl belonged to Burke Ramsay and Patsy Ramsay, not JonBenét's fingerprints, just Burke's and Patsy's. So how did pineapple end up in JonBenét's stomach? Who gave it to her? When did she eat it? This small detail directly contradicted the family's timeline. It proved JonBenét was awake and downstairs after returning home from the Christmas party. And it raised the question, what else were the parents wrong about? Or what else were they lying about? In the immediate aftermath of JonBenét's murder, everyone was a suspect. And 28 years later, many still are. The Boulder Police Department focused primarily on the family. This wasn't unusual. In cases of murdered children, especially when there's no sign of forced entry, statistically family members are responsible in the vast majority of cases. But the Ramseys had money. They had connections. And within days of JonBenét's death, they had hired some of the most powerful criminal defense attorneys in the country. Brian Morgan and Patrick Burke became the Ramsey family's legal team. Their advice was simple: stop cooperating with police. John and Patsy had given initial statements at the house on December 26th, but they refused to sit for formal police interviews for 4 months. When they finally agreed to be interviewed in April 1997, they came with conditions: separate interviews, lawyers present, limited time, certain topics off limits. This created an enormous rift between the family and investigators. Police felt the Ramseys were hiding something, obstructing the investigation, refusing to help find their daughter's killer. The Ramseys claimed they were being unfairly targeted, that Boulder police had tunnel vision, that they were being treated as suspects rather than grieving parents. Both sides dug in, and as months turned into years, the case grew colder. But let's examine why police focused on the family. First, no sign of forced entry. Every door and window in the house was either locked or showed no evidence of being used to enter. A basement window had a broken pane, but John explained he had broken it months earlier. Spiderwebs across that window were intact, suggesting nobody had gone through it recently. So how did an intruder get in? Second, the ransom note, written using materials from inside the house, demanding a specific dollar amount only someone close to the family would know, containing a practice draft, taking 20 minutes or more to write. What intruder has that kind of time and access? Third, the crime scene itself. The wine cellar where JonBenét was found was in a confusing part of the basement, not easily discovered by someone unfamiliar with the house layout. How did an intruder know where to find that room? Fourth, the family's behavior. John appeared calm, almost detached, according to some observers. He had been on the phone with his pilot that morning, arranging to fly out of Colorado, which struck investigators as odd for a father whose daughter had supposedly been kidnapped. Patsy's behavior was described as theatrical by some, genuinely distraught by others. She had taken Valium and was somewhat sedated through much of that first day. And Burke, 9-year-old Burke, showed what some investigators described as unusual affect. When interviewed days after his sister's death, he appeared unconcerned, almost cheerful. He talked about his video games. He didn't seem traumatized, but he was 9 years old. Child psychologists who reviewed his interviews noted that children process trauma differently than adults. His behavior might have been completely normal for a child in shock. Fifth, the pineapple. The bowl on the table with Burke's and Patsy's fingerprints. The pineapple in JonBenét's stomach. The contradiction in the parents' timeline. This small detail suggested the family wasn't telling the truth about what happened that night. Over time, theories emerged about each family member. The Patsy theory. Patsy, in a fit of rage over bedwetting or some other behavioral issue, struck JonBenét. The blow was more severe than intended, fracturing her skull. Realizing what she'd done, Patsy panicked and staged the kidnapping to cover it up. She wrote the ransom note. She applied the garrote to make it look like a violent intruder murder. John either helped with the cover-up or genuinely believed his wife's story about an intruder. Evidence supporting this. The ransom note handwriting similarities. Patsy's fibers found on the duct tape. Her knowledge of the house layout. Her beauty pageant background suggesting she might pressure JonBenét about appearance and behavior. Problems with this theory. Could Patsy really strangle her own daughter, even if she was already dying? The garrote was applied with extreme force. Would a mother do that to her child's body? The John theory. This theory was less popular but still circulated. John was involved in covering up the crime, whether he committed it or helped Patsy stage it. His calm demeanor suggested someone in control, possibly someone who had planned the staging. Evidence supporting this. His behavior on December 26th. His decision to move the body. His immediate hiring of defense attorneys. Problems with this theory. Almost no evidence directly implicated John. His handwriting was ruled out for the ransom note. No forensic evidence connected him to the actual murder. The Burke theory. This became the most controversial and, to many investigators, the most plausible theory. Burke, 9 years old, struck JonBenét during an argument, perhaps over the bowl of pineapple, perhaps over a Christmas toy, perhaps sibling rivalry that escalated into violence. The blow fractured her skull. Burke didn't realize how severely he'd hurt her. He might have thought she was just knocked out. The parents discovered what happened. They found JonBenét unconscious, severely injured, possibly dying, and they made a horrifying decision. Instead of calling 911 and facing the consequences of their son seriously injuring his sister, they would stage a kidnapping gone wrong. Patsy wrote the ransom note. She and John applied the garrote. They staged the scene to look like an intruder murder. They hid the body in the wine cellar. They called 911 claiming a kidnapping. Burke was told never to speak about what happened. The family maintained this fiction for 28 years. Evidence supporting this. Burke's fingerprints on the pineapple bowl. The enhanced 911 call suggesting he was awake. His unusual affect in interviews. The grand jury indictment language suggesting parents helped cover up a crime committed by someone else. Problems with this theory. Could a 9-year-old generate enough force to create that skull fracture? Some experts say yes with a heavy object. Others say it required adult strength. Could parents really strangle their daughter's body to stage a cover-up? The psychological weight of that act seems almost impossible. But the grand jury heard all the evidence, and they believed the parents knew what happened and covered it up. In September 1998, a grand jury was convened to hear evidence in the JonBenét Ramsey case. For 13 months, they listened to testimony from detectives, forensic experts, handwriting analysts, medical examiners, and others who had worked the case. In October 1999, they voted. They voted to indict John and Patsy Ramsey, not for murder, for child abuse resulting in death, and for being accessories to a crime. The indictment stated the Ramseys had permitted JonBenét to be placed in a situation that posed a threat to her life, which resulted in her death, and that they had rendered assistance to a person with intent to hinder prosecution of that person for murder. Read that language carefully. The grand jury believed someone in that house killed JonBenét, and they believed John and Patsy Ramsey helped that person avoid justice. But District Attorney Alex Hunter refused to sign the indictment. He held a press conference and announced there was insufficient evidence to prosecute. He said the grand jury had voted no true bill. That was a lie. The grand jury had voted to indict, but Hunter wouldn't move forward. The indictment remained secret for 14 years. In 2013, a judge ordered it unsealed, and the public finally learned that a grand jury had believed the Ramseys should be charged. But by then, Patsy Ramsey was dead. She had died in 2006 from ovarian cancer, and the statute of limitations on some charges had expired. John and Burke were never charged. In 1997, during the initial investigation, forensic scientists found DNA from an unknown male on JonBenét's underwear. The DNA came from blood. JonBenét's blood mixed with someone else's blood in the crotch area of the underwear she was wearing when her body was found. This DNA was tested and entered into CODIS, the FBI's combined DNA index system. No match was found. The DNA didn't belong to anyone in the Ramsey family. It didn't belong to anyone in law enforcement databases. For years, some investigators dismissed this DNA as potentially irrelevant. They theorized it could have come from manufacturing, from handling before purchase, from innocent transfer at some point before December 26th. But in 2003, new DNA technology called touch DNA emerged. This technique could extract genetic material from tiny amounts of skin cells left behind when someone touches an object. Investigators used touch DNA technology to test the waistband of the long johns JonBenet was wearing, and they found something significant. Male DNA on the waistband. DNA that appeared to match the unknown male DNA found in the underwear. This changed everything. Finding the same unknown male DNA in two different locations, on two separate items of clothing, made it much less likely this was innocent transfer from manufacturing. This suggested someone had physically handled JonBenet, touching both her underwear and her long johns, on the night she died. In July 2008, then District Attorney Mary Lacey took an extraordinary step. She sent a letter to John Ramsey officially exonerating the entire Ramsey family. The letter stated, "The match of male DNA on two separate items of clothing worn by the victim at the time of the murder makes it clear to us that an unknown male handled these items. There is no innocent explanation for its incriminating presence." Lacey apologized to the Ramsey family for the years of suspicion and accusation they had endured. She declared that the investigation should focus on finding the unknown male whose DNA was at the crime scene. Patsy Ramsey never lived to see that exoneration. She had died 2 years earlier. But many investigators and forensic experts strongly disagreed with Lacey's decision. They argued that the DNA evidence wasn't as conclusive as she claimed. First problem, the amount of DNA was extremely small. Touch DNA deals with picograms of genetic material. It's so small that contamination is a serious concern. Second problem, touch DNA can be transferred indirectly. If someone at a clothing factory touched the underwear, then touched the long johns, their DNA could be on both items without them ever being near JonBenet. Third problem, the DNA profiles from the underwear and long johns, while similar, weren't perfect matches on all genetic markers. Some experts questioned whether both samples even came from the same person. Fourth problem, no other evidence of an intruder was found. No fingerprints. No footprints that definitively came from an intruder. No fibers from unknown clothing. Just this trace DNA. If an intruder broke into the house, assaulted JonBenet, killed her, and spent time staging the scene, how did they leave behind only tiny amounts of DNA and nothing else? The Boulder Police Department announced in 2009 that they disagreed with the exoneration. They said the case remained open with all theories still on the table. In 2010, control of the case was officially moved back to the Boulder Police Department, and investigators began looking at the DNA evidence with fresh eyes and new technology. Today, genetic genealogy offers new possibilities. This technique uses DNA evidence not just to search criminal databases, but to search public genealogy databases where millions of people have uploaded their DNA to trace ancestry. Even if the perpetrator's DNA isn't in any criminal database, genetic genealogy can identify distant relatives. Investigators can build family trees and narrow down potential suspects. This is how the Golden State Killer was identified in 2018 after 44 years. This is how dozens of cold cases have been solved in recent years. And this technique could potentially be applied to the unknown DNA in the JonBenét Ramsey case. If that DNA is from the killer, if it's not contamination, if it's not innocent transfer, if enough genetic material exists to build a genealogy profile. Those are a lot of ifs, but for the first time in decades, there's a possibility that the unknown DNA could lead investigators to a person. Whether that person killed JonBenét, or whether they're just an innocent person whose DNA ended up on the clothing through some other means, remains to be seen. 28 years later, three main theories dominate discussion of the JonBenét Ramsey case. Theory 1. The intruder. Someone outside the family entered the Ramsey home on Christmas night. This person might have been in the house during holiday tours in previous weeks. They might have been familiar with the layout. They entered through an unlocked door or window. They hid somewhere in the house, waiting for the family to fall asleep. During that waiting time, they found the notepad and wrote the ransom note. Their plan was to kidnap JonBenét for ransom. But something went wrong. Maybe she woke up and screamed. Maybe she struggled. The intruder panicked and struck her, fracturing her skull. He thought she was dead or dying. He strangled her to finish the job or to make sure she couldn't identify him. He hid her body in the wine cellar and fled, leaving the ransom note behind either as misdirection or because he'd already written it and didn't know what else to do. This theory is supported by the unknown male DNA found on JonBenét's clothing. It's supported by the unidentified boot print found in the basement. It's supported by the unidentified palm print on the wine cellar door. But it's challenged by massive problems. No clear sign of forced entry. A ransom note written using materials from inside the house, taking 20 minutes or more. Knowledge of John's exact bonus amount. An intruder who had time to stage an elaborate crime scene without waking anyone. Theory 2. Patsy did it. Patsy Ramsey, under stress from beauty pageant competitions, expectations for JonBenét, and possibly other family tensions, snapped. Maybe JonBenét wet the bed, something that had been an ongoing issue. Maybe she refused to cooperate about something. Maybe Patsy's frustration boiled over in a moment of rage. She struck JonBenét, causing the skull fracture. Realizing what she'd done, she panicked. She couldn't call 911 without destroying her family's reputation, without facing potential prosecution. So she staged a kidnapping. She wrote the ransom note, taking time because she was alone with plenty of time while John and Burke slept. She applied the garrote to make it look like a violent intruder murder. She hid the body in the wine cellar. In the morning, she placed the note on the stairs and discovered it, calling 911 in a panic that was either genuine horror at what she'd done or performance to sell the kidnapping story. This theory is supported by the handwriting analysis that couldn't rule Patsy out. It's supported by her fibers found on the duct tape. It's supported by her knowledge of the house and ability to stage the scene, but it's challenged by serious questions. Could Patsy really strangle her dying daughter to stage a murder? Could she write that ransom note while her daughter lay injured or dying? The psychological weight seems impossible. Theory 3. Burke did it. Parents covered up. This is the theory that many investigators privately believe, and it's the theory that makes sense of the most evidence. Burke and JonBenét were both awake after the family returned home from the Christmas party. Burke was downstairs, possibly eating the bowl of pineapple. JonBenét came downstairs, maybe woke up and came looking for someone. An argument started. Maybe she took some of his pineapple. Maybe it was about a toy. Maybe it was typical sibling conflict that escalated. Burke, 9 years old, grabbed something heavy. A flashlight, a baseball bat, something with weight and momentum. He swung it at JonBenét in anger. The blow was more severe than he realized. JonBenét collapsed. She was unconscious, severely injured. Burke might not have understood how badly he'd hurt her. He might have thought she was just knocked out. He might have panicked and gone to get his parents. Or the parents might have discovered the scene themselves. John and Patsy found JonBenét unconscious, possibly dying. They faced an impossible choice. Call 911 and watch their son be taken into custody for seriously injuring his sister, face public scandal, possible prosecution, or stage a cover-up. They chose the cover-up. Patsy wrote the ransom note. She had time because she had all night. She wrote practice drafts. She tried to disguise her handwriting, but characteristics still showed through. Together, John and Patsy staged the scene. They applied the garrote, knowing it would look like a violent intruder murder. They hid JonBenét's body in the wine cellar. They prepared to discover a kidnapping the next morning. Burke was told never to speak about what happened. As far as the world would know, he slept through everything. This theory explains the ransom note, explains the lack of forced entry, explains the parents' behavior, explains why they immediately hired lawyers and stopped cooperating, explains the grand jury indictment language about helping cover up a crime. It explains Burke's unusual affect in interviews. He wasn't traumatized because he'd been told his sister's death wasn't his fault, was an accident, was something the family would never discuss. This theory is supported by Burke's fingerprints on the pineapple bowl, the enhanced 911 call suggesting he was awake, the parents' contradictory timeline, the immediate lawyering up, but it's challenged by questions too. Could a 9-year-old generate that much force? Could parents really strangle their daughter's body? Could a family maintain this fiction for 28 years? Each theory has evidence supporting it. Each theory has problems that don't quite fit. And that's why, 28 years later, we're still debating what happened. As of 2026, the JonBenét Ramsey murder remains officially unsolved. The Boulder Police Department continues to investigate. They've followed up on more than 21,000 tips over 28 years. They've interviewed over 1,000 people. They've traveled to 19 states pursuing leads, but no arrests have been made. In recent years, the department has applied genetic genealogy to the unknown male DNA found at the crime scene. This technique has solved dozens of cold cases. Whether it will solve this one remains to be seen. John Ramsey, now in his 80s, continues to advocate for further DNA testing. He's pushed for independent laboratories to examine the evidence. He's criticized the Boulder Police Department for what he views as decades of mismanagement. He maintains his family's innocence. He believes an intruder killed JonBenét, and he wants the case solved before he dies. Burke Ramsey, now in his mid-30s, has largely stayed out of public view. After his 2016 interview with Dr. Phil and his subsequent lawsuits against CBS and others who accused him of involvement, Burke returned to private life. He works in information technology. He tries to live normally, but he'll never escape the shadow of his sister's death and the theories that have followed him since childhood. Patsy Ramsey died in 2006 from ovarian cancer. She never saw the 2008 exoneration. She never saw justice for her daughter. She died while much of the world still believed she was responsible for JonBenét's death. The case has been the subject of countless documentaries, books, television specials, and podcasts. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone has a theory. In 2016, CBS aired The Case of JonBenét Ramsey, which explicitly laid out the theory that Burke was responsible and the parents covered it up. Burke sued for $750 million. The case settled for undisclosed terms in 2019. In 2024, Netflix released Cold Case: Who Killed JonBenét Ramsey, directed by Joe Berlinger. The documentary focused on the Boulder Police Department's failures and argued the family was unfairly targeted. The public remains divided. Some believe the family was involved. Some believe an intruder did it. Some think we'll never know the truth. December 26, 1996. A 6-year-old girl was found dead in the basement of her own home. 28 years later, no one has been held accountable. The evidence points in multiple directions. The ransom note suggests someone inside the house. The DNA suggests someone outside the family. The grand jury believed the parents covered up a crime, but prosecutors never brought charges. JonBenét Patricia Ramsey was 6 years old when she died. She loved to sing. She loved to perform. She had friends and family who loved her. She had dreams and a future that was stolen. She deserved better than what happened to her on Christmas night 1996. She deserved better than an investigation that was botched from the first hour. She deserved better than to become a tabloid sensation, her death exploited for ratings and newspaper sales. She deserved justice, and 28 years later, she still hasn't gotten it. Will this case ever be solved? Genetic genealogy offers hope. The unknown DNA, if it belongs to the killer, might finally lead to a name. But even if that happens, proving that person was in the house that night, proving they committed the murder, will be extraordinarily difficult after nearly 3 decades. The crime scene was contaminated. Evidence was compromised. Witnesses have died. Memories have faded. Justice delayed doesn't have to mean justice denied. But sometimes, delay makes justice impossible. What do you think happened that night? Was it an intruder? Was it a family member? Was it something else we haven't even considered? Drop your theory in the comments, but remember, this is a real family that has lived with tragedy and accusation for 28 years. This is a real little girl whose life mattered. If this investigation has given you new perspective on one of America's most infamous unsolved murders, subscribe to the Investigation Room. We bring you comprehensive, respectful, evidence-based coverage of cases that deserve to be remembered. Hit that notification bell for new documentaries every week. And if you have any information about this case, contact the Boulder Police Department at Boulder's Most Wanted, Boulder, Colorado, Gov, or call 303-441-1974. JonBenét Ramsey deserves justice. Her family deserves answers. And the truth, wherever it leads, deserves to come to light. Thank you for watching this investigation. These aren't just stories. These are real lives, real tragedies, real searches for truth that continue long after the world stops paying attention. Until justice is served, we won't forget.